Alright, let us get into it. Most people think selling a gun is no big deal. You trade it, fund the next purchase, tell yourself a new one is lighter, cheaper, more modern, more practical. At the time, it always makes sense. Then years pass. You walk through a gun show or scroll listings late at night, and something hits you. That one you let go of how to feel, a balance, a presence that no spec sheet can replace. Some handguns do not just fill a role. They define an era of your shooting life. Today we're talking about those guns. The ones shooters sell, justify, forget about for a while, and then regret deeply. These are not just pistols. They are reference points. Standards everything else gets compared to, often without even realizing it. Beretta 92 FS is one of those handguns that does not ask for your attention. It simply takes it the moment you wrap your hand around the grip, because everything about the pistol communicates confidence through weight, balance, and mechanical honesty. This is a full-size, all-metal service pistol with an overall length of roughly 8.5 inches, a barrel just under 5 inches, and a height that fills the hand without feeling oversized, weighing in at about 34 ounces unloaded, and noticeably more once you insert a full 15-round magazine of 9mm. That weight is not accidental, and it is not a drawback, because it is exactly what makes the gun shoot the way it does, soaking up recoil and keeping the slide movement smooth and predictable shot after shot. The open slide design, one of Beretta's most recognizable features, dramatically reduces the chance of stovepipes and feeding issues, while also giving the gun its unmistakable profile. And when paired with the falling locking block system, you get a cycling action that feels almost overbuilt, like it was designed to keep running long after lighter designs would start showing fatigue. This pistol earned its reputation the hard way, by winning military trials in the 1980s and then proving itself over decades of service, not by chasing trends or reinventing itself every few years. The double-action, single-action trigger system forces you to slow down and be deliberate, with a heavier first pull followed by a lighter, cleaner single-action brake that rewards good fundamentals. And while some shooters criticize that transition, many later realize it made them better marksmen. Ergonomically, the grip is large but natural, especially for shooters with medium to large hands, and the long sight radius from that extended barrel helps deliver consistent accuracy and reliable velocity from standard duty loads. The Beretta finish is not flashy, but it is tough, highly corrosion resistant, and emblematic of an era when military pistols were expected to survive abuse rather than win beauty contests. Of course, the 92 FS is not without drawbacks, as its size makes concealed carry difficult. The grip circumference can be too large for smaller hands, and the slide-mounted safety into cocker is not everyone's favorite control layout, especially for shooters trained on frame-mounted safeties or striker-fired guns. Still, these quirks are part of the gun's personality, and many owners who sold theirs during the polymer boom later realized that lighter did not mean better, it just meant different. Today, standard production Beretta 92 FS pistols typically sell in the range of $700 to $800, depending on condition and market fluctuations, while earlier Italian-made models from the 1980s and 1990s often command significantly higher prices among collectors, not because they are radically different mechanically, but because they represent a time when service pistols were built with a certain seriousness that is hard to quantify until it is gone. The Beretta 92 FS is not trying to compete with modern designs. It does not need to, because it already proved what it was meant to prove decades ago. And for many shooters, the regret does not come from selling a gun. It comes from realizing they let go of a piece of history that still runs flawlessly today. Walther PPQ is the kind of handgun that never begged for attention, never relied on hype, and never needed a shout to be taken seriously, which is exactly why so many owners underestimated it until it was already gone. From the outside, it looked almost too straightforward, a clean striker-fired pistol with modern lines and no flashy gimmicks. But the moment you actually shot it, everything changed. The trigger alone rewired expectations, breaking at around 5.5 pounds with an unusually crisp wall, and a reset so short and tactile that it felt instinctive, something you noticed even before you consciously processed it. For a factory striker-fired pistol, It quietly set a standard that many guns released years later still struggle to match without aftermarket work. Dimensionally, the PPQ sits comfortably in the duty size category, with an overall length of roughly 7.1 inches on the 4-inch barrel version, a height around 5.3 inches, and a weight of approximately 24 to 25 ounces unloaded, making it light enough to carry yet substantial enough to shoot flat and controllable with full power and 9mm loads. The slide feels light but precise, cycling smoothly without excess mass, while the barrel uses polygonal rifling that enhances longevity and consistency over high round counts. One of the most underrated aspects of the PPQ is the grip, which uses Walther's cross-directional texturing that actually locks into your hand when conditions get less than ideal, whether your hands are sweaty, wet, or fatigued after long-range sessions. And the ergonomics are so intuitive that the pistol naturally aligns with your point of aim without conscious adjustment. The grip angle, beaver tail, and undercut trigger guard work together in a way that makes the gun feel almost like it was molded specifically for you, especially compared to blockier designs from the same era. Capacity is a practical 15 rounds of 9mm in the standard magazine, and the controls are clean and ambidextrous, with a paddle-style magazine release that some shooters initially questioned, but later came to appreciate for its speed and consistency once trained. The PPQ also benefits from a Tenifer-treated slide, giving it excellent resistance to corrosion and wear, reinforcing the sense that this pistol was designed as a serious tool rather than a disposable consumer product. Its biggest weakness was never performance, but perception. It entered a market dominated by louder names, and many shooters sold theirs chasing trends, assuming the next pistol would feel just as good or better right out of the box. In reality, very few did. The PPQ required no trigger job, no grip tape, no compensator, no expensive modifications to feel complete, and that is something many owners only realized after they let it go. As of today, the Walther PPQ is no longer in active production, which has only strengthened its reputation, with clean used examples typically selling between $500 and $700 depending on condition and configuration, and prices slowly climbing as shooters rediscover what they lost. The real regret surrounding the PPQ is not nostalgia. It is the quiet understanding that it delivered a level of refinement and shootability straight from the factory that most modern pistols still promise, but rarely achieve. And once you have experienced that, it is hard to forget exactly how good it was. HKP 30 is one of those pistols that immediately feels different the moment you handle it, because it carries the unmistakable sense that it was engineered with performance as the priority rather than cost-cutting or trend-chasing, almost as if no one ever asked how to make it cheaper, only how to make it better. This is a full-size duty pistol with an overall length of roughly 7.1 inches, a barrel length just under 3.9 inches, a height around 5.4 inches, and an unloaded weight of approximately 26 to 27 ounces, dimensions that place it squarely in the professional service category while still maintaining excellent balance in the hand. The first thing most shooters notice is the grip, and for good reason, because the P30 features one of the most genuinely modular grip systems ever put on a production handgun, with interchangeable backstraps and side panels that allow the grip circumference and contour to be tuned precisely to the shooter's hand. Not as a marketing gimmick, but as a functional ergonomic system that actually changes how the gun feels and shoots. Once dialed in, the pistol seems to lock into your hand, reducing fatigue and improving control during long training sessions or high round count days at the range. The recoil system and cold hammer forged barrel work together to manage energy efficiently, making the P30 surprisingly soft shooting for its size, especially with duty-grade 9mm ammunition, and the slide cycles with a smooth, deliberate motion that feels controlled rather than abrupt. Internally, the engineering reflects HK's reputation for durability, with robust components designed to withstand extreme round counts and adverse conditions, which is why variations of the P30 continue to see service with law enforcement and military units in Europe, where reliability is not optional. The pistol is available in multiple trigger configurations, including traditional double-action, single-action, and the LEM system, giving shooters flexibility depending on training philosophy. And while the trigger has sometimes been criticized for not being match-light, it is consistent, safe, and predictable, qualities that matter far more in a real-world duty gun than raw pull weight. The controls are fully ambidextrous, including slide release and magazine release. And while they may feel unfamiliar at first to shooters raised on simpler layouts, they quickly become intuitive with use, reinforcing the idea that this pistol rewards time and commitment. Of course, the P30 is not without downsides, and it is important to be honest about them, as the trigger will never feel as crisp as a tuned strike or fire competition pistol. The bore axis is slightly higher than some modern designs, and the price has always been higher than comparable polymer pistols, which is exactly why so many owners convinced themselves to sell it. At the time, it was easy to believe that similar performance could be found for less money, that newer designs would replace it, or that the premium simply was not justified. Years later, many realized that the cost was never about branding, but about a level of engineering and quality control that does not age, go out of style, or become obsolete. Today, the HK P30 typically sells on the used market in the range of $600 to $800 depending on configuration and condition, and while that price may still seem high to some, it reflects a pistol that was built to last decades, not product cycles. The P30 was never meant to be flashy, never meant to dominate social media, and never meant to appeal to casual buyers, because it was designed as a serious tool for serious use, and that is exactly why selling one often turns into a slow, quiet regret, the kind that does not show up immediately, but waits patiently until you realize that reliability, comfort, and confidence like that are far harder to replace than you ever expected. Glock 19 is one of those pistols that feels so familiar, so universally understood, that people rarely stop to appreciate what it actually represents until it is no longer in their safe. And that familiarity is exactly why so many shooters underestimate the regret that comes from selling one. This pistol lives in that near-perfect middle ground where almost nothing feels compromised, with an overall length of about 7.3 inches, a barrel length just over 4 inches, a height around 5 inches, and an unloaded weight hovering near 23.5 ounces, making it large enough to shoot confidently and small enough to carry without constant frustration. It holds 15 rounds of 9mm in a standard magazine, accepts larger magazines without complaint, and feeds almost anything you put through it, which is why it became the reference point for what a practical handgun should be. The design itself is brutally simple: polymer frame, striker-fired system, minimal external controls, and a consistent trigger pull that breaks around 5.5 pounds every single time, shot after shot, year after year, across millions of pistols. That consistency is easy to dismiss when you own it, but once it is gone, you start to realize how rare it is. The Glock 19 does not demand special maintenance rituals or proprietary tools, and it does not punish you for neglect, because it was engineered to work in conditions that would sideline more delicate designs. The low bore axis and straightforward recoil impulse make it controllable for new shooters and efficient for experienced ones, while the grip angle and frame texture, though often criticized for lacking refinement, prove themselves through function rather than comfort alone. One of the most overlooked strengths of the Glock 19 is the ecosystem around it, because every holster maker supports it, every gunsmith understands it, every spare part exists somewhere nearby, and every problem has already been solved 1,000 times before. That support network becomes invisible when you own one, but painfully obvious when you do not. People sell their Glock 19 chasing something more exciting, more refined, more visually interesting, convinced that the next pistol will do everything just as well while offering something extra. Sometimes it does, but more often it introduces trade-offs that were not apparent at first. A better trigger here, but worse reliability there. A slimmer grip, but harsher recoil. A nicer finish, but limited parts availability. Over time, many shooters quietly circle back, buying another Glock 19, often the same generation they sold, and pretending it is just another purchase rather than an admission. From a technical standpoint, the pistol uses a tilting barrel Browning-style action refined to near mechanical minimalism, with generous internal tolerances that prioritize reliability over tight lockup, and a finish designed to resist corrosion, and wear through hard use rather than careful storage. It is not elegant, and it does not pretend to be. Its weaknesses are well known. The trigger feels utilitarian rather than refined. The grip texture often invites modification, and the aesthetics inspire little emotional attachment. But those shortcomings are exactly what allowed it to become a working standard rather than a niche favorite. In today's market, Glock 19 pistols remain relatively affordable compared to many competitors, typically selling between $500 and $600 depending on generation and condition, which ironically makes them easier to sell and easier to underestimate. Yet the real value of the Glock 19 is not measured in price, features, or innovation. It is measured in trust, repetition, and quiet reliability that never asks for praise. When people talk about regretting the guns they sold, the Glock 19 often comes up not because it was special in a romantic sense, but because it did everything it promised without drama, without excuses, and without ever making itself the center of attention. And once that kind of dependability is gone, it is surprisingly hard to replace. CZ75 is one of those pistols that quietly rewires how you understand recoil, balance, and control the first time you spend real time behind it, because everything about its design works with physics instead of fighting it. Built as an all-steel service pistol, the CZ75 carries an unloaded weight of roughly 35 ounces, with an overall length around 8.1 inches, a barrel length near 4.6 inches, and a grip height that fills the hand in a way that immediately feels purposeful rather than bulky. That weight is the foundation of the experience, because it soaks up recoil from 9mm in a way lighter pistols simply cannot replicate, allowing the gun to track flat and return a target with minimal effort. The most distinctive design element, the slide riding inside the frame rails rather than outside, lowers the bore axis and changes how recoil impulse is transferred into your hands, reducing muzzle rise and giving the pistol a smooth, rolling feel under fire that rewards proper grip and stance. It is a design choice that many manufacturers later copied, even if they rarely credit where it came from. The trigger system, particularly in single action, feels honest and mechanical, with a clean break typically around 4 to 5 pounds that gives clear feedback and encourages precision, while the double action pull, though heavier, is smooth and consistent enough to be learned rather than fought. This pistol does not mask poor fundamentals with lightweight or aggressive recoil springs, and it does not flatter sloppy shooting, because it shows you exactly what you're doing right and wrong every time you press the trigger. Ergonomically, the grip angle and frame contour feel natural for most hands, and the steel frame provides a sense of solidity that modern polymer pistols often lack, especially during longer training sessions where fatigue becomes a factor. Capacity is a practical 16 rounds of 9mm in standard magazines, and a long sight radius contributes to the CZ75's reputation for accuracy well beyond what most people expect from a duty pistol. Early production models were known for hand-fitted barrels and tight mechanical tolerances, contributing to their smooth shooting characteristics and long-term durability. And that attention to fit and function is part of why the platform developed such a devoted following among competitive shooters and enthusiasts alike. Of course, the CZ75 is not perfect, and it is important to acknowledge its downsides honestly, as the weight that makes it so pleasant to shoot also makes it less ideal for daily concealed carry. The slide profile offers less surface area to grasp during manipulations, and the factory sights on older models can feel dated compared to modern high-visibility options. Still, these are trade-offs rather than flaws, and many owners who sold their CZ75 during the rise of polymer pistols later realized that lighter did not mean better. It just meant different. At the time, steel frames were dismissed as outdated, inefficient, or unnecessary, and the CZ75 was often sold to fund something newer and more fashionable. Years later, shooters came to understand that the CZ75 was never trying to follow trends because it helped set them. It became a reference design, a pistol that influenced countless others while remaining quietly consistent itself. Today, standard CZ75 models remain relatively accessible, often selling in the range of $600 to $800 depending on configuration and condition, But early production models in original finish have become increasingly difficult to find and command significant premiums among collectors who understand what they represent. That scarcity only deepens the sense of regret for those who let theirs go, because the CZ75 is not just a good shooter, it is a foundational design that still holds its own decades later. Every empty space in a safe where one used to sit serves as a reminder that some pistols are not outdated. They're timeless, and once you truly understand what the CZ75 offers, replacing it with something that feels the same becomes far harder than anyone expects. SIG RAMI took everything shooters loved about the full-size CZ75 and compressed it into a compact, all-steel pistol that refused to apologize for its weight or its purpose, and that refusal is exactly why so many people regret letting it go. From the moment you pick it up, the RAMI feels dense and deliberate, with an overall length of about 6.5 inches, a barrel right around 3 inches, a height just under 4.7 inches, and an unloaded weight hovering near 25 ounces, which is heavy by modern compact standards, but intentional in every sense of the word. That weight is not there to impress anyone on paper. It is there to work for you, because when you touch off a round of 9mm, the pistol stays planted, the recoil impulse feels controlled rather than sharp, and the sights return a target far more predictably than most lightweight compacts ever manage. The steel frame gives the RAMI a sense of stability that inspires confidence, especially during rapid strings of fire, and it shoots far larger than its dimensions suggest, often surprising new owners who expected something snappy and unforgiving. Like its bigger sibling, the RAMI uses the slide-inside frame rail design, which lowers the bore axis and contributes to that flat shooting behavior. Even though the shorter grip and reduced sight radius demand honest fundamentals from the shooter. Capacity is modest by today's standards, typically 10 rounds of 9mm with a flush-fitting magazine and higher with extended magazines. But what it gives up in raw capacity, it makes up for in shootability and reliability, feeling far more like a duty pistol that shrank rather than a compact that compromised its way down. The double-action single-action trigger system gives shooters options, with a long, deliberate first pull followed by a lighter, more precise single-action break. And while the trigger is not competition-tuned from the factory, it is consistent and predictable, reinforcing the sense that this pistol was built as a working tool rather than a range toy. Ergonomically, the grip is short but well contoured, locking into the hand without excessive texture. And while shooters with larger hands may find their pinky hanging off the bottom, many came to appreciate how controllable the gun remained despite its compact grip. The RAMI was never flashy, never marketed aggressively, and never designed to chase trends, which is part of why it quietly built a loyal following instead of mainstream hype. When polymer frame compacts flooded the market promising lighter weight and higher capacity, many RAMI owners convinced themselves it was outdated, too heavy, or unnecessary, and sold theirs expecting to replace it easily later. That assumption proved to be wrong almost immediately. When CZ discontinued the RAMI in favor of newer polymer platforms, the market reacted fast, availability dried up, and prices began creeping upward as shooters realized there was nothing else quite like it. Modern micro-compacts may carry more rounds and weigh less, but very few offer the same combination of controllability, mechanical confidence, and all-steel durability that made the RAMI special. Its downsides are real and worth acknowledging, as the weight can make extended carry tiring. The short grip can feel cramped for some shooters, and the slide can be slightly harder to manipulate due to its low profile. But these are trade-offs rather than flaws, and many owners only recognize their value in hindsight. Today, clean examples of the CZ RAMI often sell in the range of $700 to $900, depending on condition and configuration, a notable increase from what they once commanded, and that price reflects not just scarcity, but a growing appreciation for what the pistol represented. The RAMI had substance, the kind you feel every time you shoot it, the kind that does not show up on spec sheets or marketing slogans. And once it is gone, replacing that feeling with something newer and lighter proves far more difficult than most shooters ever expect. The 1911 platform is where logic and emotion collide in a way that very few firearms ever manage to achieve, because on paper it looks heavy, low capacity, and outdated, Yet the moment you actually shoot one, all of that theory quietly falls apart. A traditional full-size 1911 runs an overall length of roughly 8.5 inches with a 5-inch barrel, a height just over 5.5 inches, and an unloaded weight hovering close to 39 or 40 ounces, depending on configuration. And that mass is not a flaw. It is the entire point. When you fire it, recoil does not snap sharply upward. It rolls straight back into the hand, controlled and predictable, allowing the sights to track smoothly and settle naturally. The single-action trigger is the heart of the platform, breaking cleanly around 4 to 5 pounds with almost no take-up and no sponginess, delivering a level of feedback that reminds shooters what a truly mechanical trigger feels like. Every press feels intentional, and that alone changes how people shoot, slowing them down just enough to be precise without feeling sluggish. Ergonomically, the grip angle, slim frame, and straight-back trigger pull work together in a way that feels timeless rather than dated. And despite the design being over a century old, it still points naturally for an enormous range of shooters. The long sight radius provided by the full-length slide contributes to accuracy that remains impressive even by modern standards. And the steel frame absorbs recoil in a way lighter pistols simply cannot replicate. Of course, the 1911 asks something in return, as it demands proper maintenance, quality magazines, and ammunition it likes. And it is less forgiving of neglect than modern striker-fired pistols built with looser tolerances. Capacity is modest, typically 7 or 8 rounds depending on magazine and caliber, which on paper seems like a disadvantage. Yet many shooters find that each round feels more deliberate and controlled, encouraging accuracy over volume. The platform also offers nearly endless customization, from sights and safeties to grips and finishes, which is both a blessing and a trap because it tempts owners to chase perfection rather than appreciate what they already have. This is where regret often begins. Shooters sell a good 1911 chasing lighter frames, polymer convenience, or higher resale value, convincing themselves that the platform is replaceable. Later, they realize that not all 1911s are created equal, and the one they let go had a balance of fit, trigger feel, and character that cannot be replicated by throwing money at parts. Many spend years and thousands of dollars chasing that same feeling through custom builds and boutique brands, only to discover that the magic was not just in the design, but in that specific pistol they once owned. The weaknesses of the 1911 are well known, as it is heavier to carry, lower in capacity, and often more expensive to maintain, but its strengths are equally undeniable, offering unmatched trigger quality, recoil control, and a shooting experience that feels deeply connected and intentional. In today's market, prices vary wildly, with entry-level 1911s starting around $600 to $700, while well-built examples from reputable manufacturers often climb into the $1,200 to $2,000 range. And truly refined or semi-custom guns go far beyond that. What many shooters realize too late is that selling a good 1911 rarely saves money in the long run, because once you understand what a properly built one offers, it becomes a benchmark you quietly compare everything else against. The regret does not come immediately. It shows up years later when nothing quite feels the same, and you finally admit that craftsmanship, weight, and mechanical honesty are not things you can replace with novelty, no matter how modern it looks. Colt Python represents a level of revolver craftsmanship that feels almost unreal by modern standards, because everything about it reflects a time when patience, skilled hands, and mechanical pride mattered more than speed of production or cost efficiency. From a moment you see one, the Python communicates intent through its proportions and finish, whether in the classic 4-inch or 6-inch barrel configurations, with an overall length ranging from roughly 9.75 inches to over 11.5 inches depending on barrel length, and an unloaded weight that typically falls between 38 and 46 ounces. That weight is perfectly balanced, not front-heavy, not sluggish, but steady, giving the revolver a poised feel that settles naturally into the hand. The deep, mirror-like royal blue finish on original production models was not just cosmetic. It was the result of extensive hand polishing that took hours per gun, producing a surface so smooth and rich that it almost looks liquid under light, a level of finish that is simply not economical to replicate today. The full-length underlug beneath the barrel adds visual authority while also serving a functional purpose, taming muzzle rise and helping the revolver track flat during recoil, especially when firing full power .357 Magnum loads. At the heart of the Python is its action, and this is where the legend truly lives, because the double-action trigger pull feels impossibly smooth, stacking evenly and predictably until the hammer falls, while the single-action brake is crisp and light, often hovering around 3 to 4 pounds, with a glass rod quality that feels more like a precision instrument than a mass-produced firearm. This was not achieved through clever shortcuts or modern coatings, but through painstaking hand-fitting of internal components by craftsmen who often spent entire careers perfecting that single skill. The forged frame, tight cylinder lockup, and precise timing gave the Python exceptional accuracy for a revolver, with many examples easily capable of match-grade performance straight from the factory. Capacity is the traditional 6 rounds, and while that may seem modest, the deliberate pace encouraged by the revolver's operation reinforces accuracy and control rather than speed for its own sake. Of course, the Python was never cheap, and it was never intended to be, because it demanded time, expertise, and labor that could not be rushed. And when Colt ceased original production in the mid-2000s, the market reacted almost immediately. Prices climbed rapidly, often tripling or more over the following decade. But the regret most owners feel is not about missed profit. It is about realizing they let go of something that embodied a level of craftsmanship that no longer fits into modern manufacturing realities. The original Python had quirks, as all finely tuned machines do, including sensitivity to heavy use of hot loads over extreme round counts and a need for proper maintenance by knowledgeable hands. But those traits were part of what made it special rather than disposable. When Colt reintroduced the Python years later using modern manufacturing methods, the new versions proved to be excellent revolvers in their own right, stronger, more durable, and more consistent for high-volume shooting, but they are not the same experience. They lack the hand-polished depth, the old-style action feel, and the subtle imperfections that came from human craftsmanship rather than CNC perfection. Today, original Colt Pythons routinely command prices well into the thousands of dollars, often ranging from $3,000 to $5,000 or more depending on condition, barrel length, and finish. And while that number is impressive, it misses the point. The true loss for those who sold theirs is not financial. It is emotional and tactile, because they gave up a revolver that represented a philosophy of gun making that simply does not exist anymore. The Colt Python was not just a tool. It was a statement about what happens when skilled hands are allowed to work without compromise. And once you have owned something like that, replacing it with anything modern, no matter how good, never quite fills the same space. Ruger GP100 is the opposite kind of legend, the kind that earns its reputation not through elegance or refinement, but through sheer, unapologetic durability, because this revolver was never designed to impress anyone in a display case. It was designed to keep working when everything else gives up. From the moment you pick one up, the GP100 feels solid in a way that is hard to explain until you have handled it, with an overall length that varies by configuration, but typically lands around 9.5 inches for the 4-inch barrel model, a heavy full underlug barrel, and an unloaded weight right around 40 ounces that immediately tells you this gun is not interested in being lightweight or delicate. That mass is deliberate, because it soaks up recoil from full power .357 Magnum loads with confidence, turning what could be a sharp, punishing experience into something controllable and predictable, even during extended shooting sessions. The GP100 uses Ruger's triple locking cylinder system, locking the cylinder at the front, rear, and bottom, creating an incredibly strong lockup that resists wear and keeps timing intact even after thousands upon thousands of rounds. And that strength is backed by a solid frame design without a removable side plate, which eliminates a common weak point found in many traditional revolvers. Internally, the transfer bar safety system allows the revolver to be carried safely with all chambers loaded, reinforcing the idea that this was built as a working gun meant to be used hard rather than babied. The double-action trigger pull is heavy, often around 10 pounds from the factory, but it is smooth and consistent, stacking predictably and rewarding shooters who take the time to learn it, while the single-action brake is crisp and clean, typically around 4 to 5 pounds, making deliberate, accurate shots feel almost effortless. Ergonomically, the GP100 is practical rather than graceful, with grip options that range from compact to full size, allowing shooters to tailor recoil control and comfort to their needs, and the balance between barrel and frame gives the revolver a steady, planted feel that inspires confidence when shooting heavy loads. Accuracy is more than sufficient for duty or field use, aided by a generous sight radius, fully adjustable rear sights, and a robust front sight that does not feel fragile or ornamental. The GP100's real magic, though, is in its tolerance for abuse, because this is the revolver you can neglect, leave dirty, exposed to harsh environments, and still trust to function when you need it. A reputation reinforced by countless stories of GP100's surviving years of hard use with minimal maintenance and still locking up tight. It is not refined in the way a Colt Python is refined, and it never tried to be, because its purpose was always different, prioritizing strength, longevity, and reliability over polish or prestige. That utilitarian nature is exactly why so many people sold theirs, trading them for prettier revolvers with smoother factory triggers or more elegant finishes, convincing themselves that durability was overrated or that they wanted something with more character. Years later, many realized that character is easy to admire, but trust is harder to replace. The GP100 does not demand attention or admiration. It simply does its job without complaint, and that kind of quiet dependability becomes invisible until it is gone. Of course, the GP100 has downsides, as its weight makes it less appealing for constant carry. Its trigger often benefits from tuning to reach its full potential, and its aesthetics will never win beauty contests. But those are trade-offs rather than flaws, especially for shooters who value function over form. In today's market, the Ruger GP100 remains relatively accessible, typically selling between $600 and $800 depending on barrel length and condition, a price that reflects its working-class roots and Ruger's commitment to producing durable firearms at reasonable cost. That affordability ironically makes it easier to sell and easier to underestimate. Yet the regret that follows often hits harder than expected, because once you have owned a revolver that simply refuses to quit, everything else starts to feel a little more fragile. The Ruger GP100 is the kind of gun you trust without thinking about it, the kind you reach for when reliability matters more than refinement, and for many shooters, realizing they gave that up for something prettier is a lesson learned far too late, because beauty fades, trends change, but a revolver that just keeps working is something you never truly stop missing once it is gone. SIG Sauer P226 is the handgun that quietly defined what a modern duty pistol should be long before the term became fashionable. And it did so not by chasing trends, but by proving itself where it mattered most, in trials, in service, and over decades of real-world use by professionals who valued performance over price. From the moment you pick up a P226, the balance feels deliberate and reassuring, with an overall length of roughly 7.7 inches, a barrel length around 4.4 inches, a height just over 5.5 inches, and an unloaded weight in the low 34-ounce range, giving it a solid, confidence-inspiring presence without feeling unwieldy. That weight works in your favor, especially with duty grade 9mm, smoothing out recoil and allowing the pistol to track flat and return a target naturally, shot after shot, without forcing the shooter to fight the gun. The frame to slide fit feels tight without being finicky, and the stainless steel slide, originally designed to withstand the stresses of high-pressure military ammunition, gives the pistol a sense of overbuilt durability that immediately separates it from lighter designs. The double-action, single-action trigger system is a defining feature of the P226 experience, with a longer, deliberate first pull followed by a clean, crisp single-action brake that often lands around 4.5 pounds, rewarding good fundamentals and giving the shooter clear feedback with every press. This trigger system was never meant to be flashy or competition-light, but it is consistent, predictable, and trustworthy, which is exactly why so many professionals relied on it in high-stress environments. Ergonomically, the grip fills the hand in a natural way, offering excellent control without excessive texturing. And while shooters with smaller hands sometimes criticize its circumference, many later appreciate how stable and planted it feels during rapid fire and extended training sessions. Magazine capacity is a practical 15 rounds of 9mm in standard configuration, and the pistol feeds reliably across a wide range of ammunition types, reinforcing its reputation as a true duty gun rather than a range toy. One of the most overlooked strengths of the P226 is how little it asks of the shooter in return, as it does not require aftermarket parts, trigger jobs, or grip modifications to feel complete, because it was designed from the start as a finished system rather than a base platform meant to be upgraded. The recoil impulse feels smooth and controlled. The sights are easy to track, and the controls are laid out logically, making the pistol intuitive to run once you spend time with it. Of course, the P226 is not without drawbacks, and it is important to acknowledge them honestly, as it is heavier than modern polymer pistols, thicker through the grip, and generally more expensive than many striker-fired alternatives, which is exactly why so many owners sold theirs during the rise of lighter, simpler designs. At the time, it was easy to believe that the future belonged to polymer frames and minimal controls, and that the P226 was a relic of a more complicated era. What many shooters did not realize was that the P226 was never competing with the future because it helped define it. It set a standard for reliability, shootability, and durability that newer pistols still measure themselves against, often without matching its balance of qualities. The P226 earned its reputation the hard way through documented endurance testing, military and law enforcement adoption, and decades of continuous service, not through marketing claims or social media hype. That legacy is why so many shooters regret selling one, because once it is gone, you start to notice how few pistols feel as complete straight out of the box. In today's market, SIG Sauer P226 pistols typically sell between $800 and $1,000, depending on configuration, condition, and production era, with certain variants commanding even higher prices, reflecting both their build quality and their enduring reputation. That price can make them tempting to sell when chasing something newer, but the regret often comes later, when shooters realize that lighter does not always mean better, and simpler does not always mean more capable. The P226 is not flashy, and it does not try to reinvent itself every few years, because it does not need to. It delivers balance, control, and confidence in a way that feels effortless. And once you have owned a pistol that does everything right without asking for attention, replacing it with something that feels as trustworthy becomes far harder than expected. The SIG Sauer P226 did not just keep up with the future. It set a bar that the future is still trying to reach. And for many who sold theirs, that realization comes only after it is too late. Here is the truth most shooters only learn with time. Some guns are more than tools meant to fill a role or check a box on a list. They become markers of who you were as a shooter at a certain point in your life, tied to memories, lessons learned, and confidence built over thousands of rounds. When you sell one of those guns, you're not just moving on from metal and springs. You're letting go of familiarity, trust, and a piece of your own history. That is why regret does not always show up right away. It creeps in later when nothing else feels quite the same in your hands. So before you trade one away to chase something newer or lighter, take a moment and really think about what you are giving up. And if one of these guns is still sitting in your safe, maybe this is your reminder that some things are worth holding on to a little longer, because once they are gone, replacing what they meant is far harder than replacing the gun itself.